The Pentagon has confirmed it. 5,000 American troops are being withdrawn from Germany, and the fallout is reverberating across NATO capitals tonight. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth signed the order, and make no mistake, this is directly tied to the very public breakdown in relations between President Trump and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, a man who thought it was appropriate to publicly declare that America was being humiliated by Iran while American soldiers stand guard on German soil. This isn't just a diplomatic spat. This could be a fundamental reordering of the transatlantic alliance as we've known it since 1945. Joining me now are Marcus Webb, our defense and security analyst, and Sophia Reeves, our economics and markets editor. Marcus, let me start with you. Is Trump right to pull these troops, or is he gambling with Western security to settle a personal score?
Thanks, Emma. Look, I want to push back immediately on that framing. This is not about a personal score, and reducing it to Trump's ego is exactly the kind of lazy analysis that has allowed this problem to fester for 30 years. Here's the reality. Germany has the fourth largest economy on the planet. Its GDP is $4.5 trillion, and for decades it failed to meet the basic NATO commitment of spending 2% of GDP on its own defense. 2%. That's not an onerous burden. That's the bare minimum of seriousness. And while Germany was building an extraordinarily generous welfare state and making itself economically dependent on Russian gas, decisions that weakened Western security, American taxpayers were picking up the tab. Now, the moment Washington finally starts pushing back, German Chancellor Merz goes to the press and says, America is being humiliated by Iran. With all due respect to the Chancellor, you don't get to publicly undermine your allies' military credibility in the press while 35,000 American soldiers guarantee your national security. Tucker Carlson has been making this exact argument for years, and the foreign policy establishment has treated him like he's speaking heresy. But he's right. These troops should have conditions on them, and Merz has now learned that the hard way.
But Marcus, devil's advocate here, pulling troops doesn't punish Merz, it punishes NATO. It potentially leaves a gap that Vladimir Putin could exploit before Germany has time to fill it. Aren't we cutting off our nose to spite our face? And Sophia, what's your take? Is this smart strategic leverage or economic self-harm?
Well, look, I actually think Marcus is making the right argument for the wrong reasons, and that distinction matters enormously. The burden-sharing argument is correct, and the data is absolutely on his side. But here's what I think Marcus is missing. The economic relationship between the US and Germany isn't just about defense spending. It's deeply intertwined in ways that make aggressive troop withdrawals genuinely risky for American interests, too. Germany is one of America's largest trading partners. American companies, Ford, GM, countless others, have massive manufacturing and commercial exposure in Europe. You start shaking the foundations of the transatlantic alliance, you introduce the kind of geopolitical uncertainty that markets absolutely hate, and American businesses pay a price alongside European ones. The smarter play here is to use this moment as genuine leverage to extract concrete, verifiable commitments on defense spending, not a vague promise, a binding timetable, and then hold Germany to it publicly. What Hegseth has done is fire a warning shot. And I think that's actually the right move. But if the trajectory is toward wholesale withdrawal rather than strategic pressure, that's where this gets economically dangerous.
I hear what Sophia is saying, but with respect, that analysis treats this purely as a negotiating tactic when there's a deeper principle at stake. Look, America has been presenting this bill for 30 years. 30 years of gentle diplomatic pressure. 30 years of NATO summits where commitments were made and not kept. 30 years of we'll do better. And then Merz, the man who positioned himself as the tough conservative alternative, publicly lectures Washington about its military strategy while benefiting from American security guarantees. At some point, words stop working. Actions have to follow. 5,000 troops is 14% of the U.S. presence in Germany. It's a signal, not a collapse. And frankly, if that signal doesn't concentrate minds in Berlin, nothing will. The uncomfortable truth is that Europe has had every incentive to stay dependent and no incentive to change. You want to change that calculus? You change the incentives. That's not recklessness. That's leverage that actually works.
Here's what I want to know, and I want both of you to think about this carefully. where does this actually end? Not in abstract terms, but in the next 6 months. We've got an Iran situation that's still unresolved, a war in Ukraine that's still grinding on, and now a fracture in the NATO alliance at exactly the wrong moment. Sophia, where do you see this going?
The way I see this playing out, there are two realistic paths. The most likely scenario, and history actually supports this, is what I'd call managed tension. Germany accelerates its defense spending commitments, makes enough of a public show of it to give Trump and Hegseth a political win, and the relationship stabilizes without fully rupturing. European markets are already pricing in geopolitical risk premium on the euro, and European governments are very sensitive to that pressure. The risk is that this becomes a cycle. Germany makes promises, America accepts them, the urgency fades, and 5 years from now, we're having this exact same conversation. The second path, if Merz doubles down and keeps publicly criticizing American military operations, is a genuine deterioration that I think would be historically significant. That's the scenario nobody wants to write about because it's too uncomfortable.
Here's what concerns me most, and I think this is the risk that both Emma and Sophia are underweighting. Russia is watching this. Every moment of visible NATO disunity is an intelligence gift to Moscow. I'm not saying Trump is wrong to apply pressure. He isn't. But the timeline matters critically. If there's a 6-month window in which European defense capabilities haven't yet been rebuilt and American commitment appears uncertain, that's precisely the kind of strategic ambiguity that historically emboldens revisionist powers to test boundaries. The trajectory suggests Putin doesn't need NATO to collapse. He just needs it to hesitate. And right now, for the first time in decades, there's a credible question about whether it will.
A fractured alliance, a watching Moscow, and a German chancellor learning the very hard way that American patience has a price tag. Marcus Webb, Sophia Reeves, genuinely brilliant analysis tonight. One thing is certain, someone in the Chancellery in Berlin is not sleeping well, and for the first time in a long time, perhaps that's exactly how it should be.